When I reviewed 2001 A Space Odyssey about a year ago, I made a good effort to do as little referencing as possible to other people's feelings on the matter. I wanted to make sure that the views I expressed were my own and not part of any bandwagon I was jumping onto. The truth is that the things I had to say about the film were not particularly new, they just hadn't been said in a long time. When it was released in 1968, the film was met with a very mixed reaction. There were many walkouts and negative reviews. Roger Ebert even recounts the incident of Rock Hudson storming out of the theater halfway in, asking, quote, "Will someone please tell me what the hell this is about?" In fact, after one of the first screenings, the audience reaction was so restless that Kubrick ended up having to cut about 17 minutes worth of extraneous footage involving another goddamn ship docking at another goddamn space station. Which, if you're going to bother to do that, makes you wonder why he didn't just cut 3/4 of the movie. If you're gonna cut 17 minutes of nothing, why not just cut all the nothing? As Roger Ebert writes in the 1997 article, the overnight Hollywood judgment was that Kubrick had become derailed, that in his obsession with effects and set pieces, he had failed to make a movie. But, Roger Ebert continues, what he had actually done was make a philosophical statement about man's place in the universe, using images as those before him had used words, music, or prayer. In other words, he failed to make a movie. My review was intended to demonstrate, using nothing but a blow-by-blow description of what is actually happening in the film, that 2001 is empty, vacuous, devoid of coherence or content, to quote another famously outraged man. But, much to my surprise, following the review, I became inundated with assurances that I just didn't get it. The film, in fact, isn't supposed to have a plot, or a story, or any kind of character development at all. There is no plot on purpose, is a phrase I have heard more than any other since the creation of my review. This is even consistent to Ebert's review when he concedes that only at this point, more than a fucking hour in, does a plot develop. What do I do with a claim like this? I feel like Stan Marsh in the Mormon episode of South Park. You're telling me that 2001 fans actually know that 2001 has no plot and they're still calling it a masterpiece? Well, hell, anyone cannot write a plot. I'm not writing one right now. Why isn't anyone calling me a genius? The overwhelmingly positive reviews of 2001 are some of the strangest that I've ever read. Strange because if you didn't know what movie these people were reviewing, you'd swear they were negative reviews. Let's read some of the passages from those reviews, shall we? Much of the dialogue exists only to show people talking to one another without much regard to content. There is hardly any character development in the plot, then as a result, little suspense. Kinda sounds like this. The events are shown with an absolute minimum of dialogue. There is no attempt to develop the personalities of the characters. Except this is from a negative review of the movie I Spit on Your Grave. 2001 is indeed beyond description by conventional plot terms and descriptive trade paper summaries. Kinda sounds like this. The movie has no plot in a conventional sense. It is simply a series of episodes strung together one after another. Except this is from a negative review of Hellraiser 2. The docking of the space shuttle and the space station is deliberately slow, and so is the action. Kinda sounds like this. Spaceships take an unconscionable amount of time to get anywhere, and nothing of dramatic or human interest happens along the way. Except this is from a negative review of Star Trek the Motion Picture. These comparisons have led me to forever ask the following question. Why is having no plot, story, characters, dialogue, or narrative structure a good thing when it comes to 2001, but a bad thing when it comes to every other movie in the history of movies? And to this day, that question has not been answered for me. 2001 is not the worst movie I have ever seen. My feelings are far stranger than that. 2001 is the least movie I have ever seen. My fascination over this anomaly of the cinema lies in one dumbfounding fact. 2001 may be the only film in the history of film to ever be praised for not having a plot, not having a story, not having characters, not having dialogue, not having a narrative structure. And now we come to the issue of 2010, the year we make contact. A movie that I didn't even know existed until people started asking what I thought of it. Why hadn't I heard of this movie before? Even with sequels that were not as well received as their predecessors, I had at least still heard of them. The reason I had never heard of this is that even despite the fact that this movie received generally favorable reviews upon its release, really no better or worse than Back to the Future 2 or Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, 2010 still managed to develop the reputation as a film that most would rather see buried in a field somewhere and never spoken of again. But why? The answer to that question is the reason for this review. I never thought that a movie's reception could ever be as backward and bewildering to me as 2001, but then along comes this. As Roger Ebert says in his 1984 review, this is a movie that owes more to George Lucas than to Stanley Kubrick, more to Star Wars than to Thus Spoke Zarathustra. You say that like it's a bad thing. If Kubrick sometimes seemed to be making a bloodless movie with faceless characters, Hyams pays a great deal of attention to story and personality. Wow, story? Personality? No, these things don't belong in a movie. Because 2010 depends so much upon its story, it would be unfair to describe more than the essentials. Yeah, God forbid a movie should rely on a story. Did I really want to know, A, why HAL 9000 disobeyed Dave's orders, or B, the real reason for the Discovery's original mission, or C, what the monoliths were trying to tell us? Why wouldn't you want to know that? You should have wanted to know that in the first movie. You should have been pissed off that they didn't tell you that in the first movie, thus wasting your time. 2010 was fairly well received, yet shunned. But why is that? Even some of the most harsh critics concede that at best, the story was fine, the plot was fine, the characters were fine, the dialogue was fine, and the narrative structure was fine. So why was a generally good movie regarded as being worse than it is, even despite people having nothing particularly bad to say about it? This is the reason for my review. 2010 may be the only film in the history of film to ever be condemned for having a plot, having a story, having characters, having dialogue, having a narrative structure. This confirms for me my suspicion that the whole issue of 2001 is the nexus into the bizarro world. Now, because comparisons are inevitable whether you like either movie or not, they will be present and in force as I review 2010. Therefore, my review can be seen as both a review in and of itself, and also as an extension of my 2001 review. While I will be predominantly reviewing 2010, I will also heavily compare it to the original 2001 film, thus making arguments that I only touched on in my original review of that film. Finally, there is the issue of two questions I am frequently asked on this matter. One, do I feel the same of other movies that are in a similar vein to 2001? And two, do I truly understand what Kubrick was trying to do with 2001, or was my review based on a misunderstanding of his motivations? I will address both of these questions in an afterword following the review of 2010. Until then, please enjoy my review of 2010, the year we make contact.
You know his words will get you farther than the film will ever go. Give him a moment of your time, he'll tell you what's wrong with the show. He knows what's good, what's bad, what's really bad. His face is just a sign. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
I'll tell you what the hell I'm laughing at. I didn't even need to review 2001: A Space Odyssey. The opening of 2010, the year we make contact, is all the review I ever needed. The film opens with a montage of details regarding the events of 2001, taking us step by step through the events of that film. Now, I want to be clear on something. This is not just a summary of a few things we may need to know in order to understand this movie. This is a step-by-step account of every single thing that actually happened in that movie. The opening shots of 2001: A Space Odyssey after the title screen lasted 1 minute and 39 seconds before getting to the monkeys, which is more than half the length of this movie's background scene. This means that in the time it took Stanley Kubrick to show us 12 shots of landscape, Hyams had shown us virtually the entire 2001 movie. So after rendering moot the necessity of even watching 2001 at all, Hyams then moves on with his own film. Here I started to become very nervous. I remembered what happened the last time a 2000 and something movie began, and the last thing I wanted to do was slog through more nothing.
You are Dr. Haywood Floyd?
Who the hell are you?
I'm Moiseyevich. I'm here to talk about your problem.
Really? What problem's that?
You were chairman of the National Council on Astronautics. Now you are a school teacher. This was by your own choice?
Chancellor of the university. It pays better. What do you care?
You were responsible for the Discovery mission. It was a failure. Someone had to be blamed, so it was you.
Information! Precious, glorious information! Wow, seeing as how Hyams is informing us that the Discovery mission actually affected someone and something other than dead air and nothing, it seems he may actually have a story to tell us.
I just read your final report on what happened to Discovery. You left a good number of loose edges.
Ends.
Ah, loose ends, yes, thank you.
Wow, that actually sounded like a real spontaneous bit of a conversation. Seeing as how he went to the trouble to add that small amount of detail, it seems Hyams might actually have something to talk about in this movie.
You just read that report? Took you this long to steal our secrets?
How long does it take for your people to steal ours?
Same amount of time.
This is very bad for my asthma.
Oh wow, this guy has asthma? I mean, it's not that big a deal, but it's at least something I didn't know about him before now. This small touch indicates to me that this is a real dimensional person talking to someone who got screwed over politically thanks to a failed mission. So seeing as how Hyam is going to the trouble to put even the little touches on these guys, it seems he might actually have some characters to show us.
The small monolith you people brought back from the moon, your government has been very selfish and stupid in keeping it to yourselves. You never let us examine it. What have you found out about it?
Nothing. It's impenetrable. We tried lasers, nuclear detonators, nothing worked.
Really? Oh wow, that's an interesting development. It's certainly a great deal fucking more interesting than watching a bunch of faceless astronauts bumble around it for 45 minutes.
And the computer on board the Discovery, the HAL 9000, can it be reactivated?
Yes.
It can? Holy shit, what is Hal going to have to say for himself? Hot damn, now I'm intrigued. The Russian lays out the terms of their mutual problem. The Russians are sending a spacecraft to the adrift Discovery, and the Americans are doing the same, but it will take them far longer to get there. The downside for the Russians, however, is that they lack the intel necessary to truly understand what to expect when they get there.
Here we have our quandary. We are going to get there first, yet you have the knowledge to make the trip work.
Okay, so far, I can totally understand why this movie was tossed aside. I mean, sure, Hyams is laying out his story, introduced by detailed characters with interesting backgrounds, and presenting a conflict whereby both sides must either put aside their political differences for the sake of the mission's success, or save face for the sake of their own governments but risk putting the mission in jeopardy. But where's the landscape? The Russian proposes that the trip to Discovery be a joint mission between Russian and American scientists, which Floyd is receptive to, but naturally the government is not. You see, apparently Hyams was under the impression that the Cold War was going to last forever, so even though this is set in 2001, we're still playing tug-of-war with the Russians politically. The Russian recommends that Floyd check Discovery's orbit, which reveals that something is either pushing or pulling it towards a moon. This is an unexpected development, so Floyd now tries to sell the idea to a colleague. This particular individual explains why the plan won't be as easy as it sounds.
We've got 2 more aircraft carriers off the coast of Honduras. The Russians are moving some of their big stuff. Now you got the Joint Chiefs screaming about Russian satellites with anti-missile lasers on them. So we got to send up our laser satellites to counteract theirs. So the president has come to the conclusion that the NCA should be placed under the jurisdiction of the Defense Department. Enough with the crazy scientists spending all this money trying to talk to Martians. So, here we are on your actual brink. My agency is going to become a part of the military. I got a president with his finger poised on the button, and you want me to walk across the park and tell him we want to hitch a ride with those very same Russians. Have I missed anything?
That's about it.
This is an interesting look at the relationship between scientists and the military, as well as the politics involved in both. Dr. Floyd doesn't seem to have any interest in a political game of cat and mouse with anyone. He's just a scientist that wants to understand and learn more about life in the universe. But to the people giving him the orders, this couldn't be farther from their radar screen. The very act of going somewhere with members of an enemy nation is enough to make them flip their shit.
3 men. I figure we need 3 men.
The Russians must be laughing their asses off.
Kernow. He's building Discovery 2 right now, so he knows more about the original than anyone. He's the only one that can start Discovery in a short time.
And I suppose you want to go. How the hell am I going to sell it?
The Russians are going to go aboard Discovery with or without us. Ask him if he wants them to have all the answers.
Not bad.
We left some good men up there, and I sent them. I have to go.
Okay, so far, I can totally understand why this movie was shunned. I mean, sure, Hyams is addressing the issue of scientific exploration versus political posturing, and creating a sincere and personal motive for our main protagonist to go along despite the political implications. But where's the stewardess bringing some passenger his juicy juice for 45 minutes? So then we cut to Dr. Chandra, who builds and operates the units. He discusses the issue of reactivating HAL with another such unit.
We have often spoken about HAL.
Yes, we have.
We've spoken about HAL's anomalous behavior. You have told me that we cannot solve the problem of HAL's behavior without more information.
That is correct. I enjoy talking about Hal.
Yeah, me too.
I would like to disconnect some of your circuits, particularly those involving your higher functions, just like HAL was disconnected, and then I would like to see the effects on you when I reconnect your systems, just the way I will with HAL. Does this disturb you?
I am unable to answer that without more specific information.
I'm very sorry. It probably doesn't mean anything, so don't worry about it.
This is where my 2001 sucks mantra is going to take a slight detour. As I have stated in my 2001 review, I have found HAL to be the only positive thing about the vacuum that was 2001. His presence was so fascinating and gripping that it nearly transformed Space Odyssey into an actual film. Nearly. The scene involving Chandra communicating with Sal is fine. It demonstrates that he has an affinity for the units beyond regarding them as mere equipment, and presents an interesting dynamic between organic and synthetic life. But the scenes involving HAL were better than this. 2001 managed to convey the issue of artificial intelligence as being sentient in a way that was more subtle, but also more meaningful. So this is one area where I'm going to side with the 2001 fans that less was definitely more. But let's see where they end up going with this. Welcome to part 2. So as the loose ends of the mission are tied up and the politicians running the show are appeased, Dr. Haywood Floyd can now begin his training for the mission. This means inevitably having to say goodbye to his family for a very long time. His wife seems to disapprove of this, but we never really get to the emotional bottom of this conflict. A short scene is spent establishing the emotional discontent of the wife, but the film then moves on to virtually never exploring the issue again. This is in fact a large problem with this hunk of the film. There are a few scenes that pay lip service to the emotional conflicts, but never really end up paying off. They almost feel like a trailer to a fuller movie that we will never end up seeing. During the training mission, Dr. Floyd discusses the cryostasis protocols of the mission with his son.
Daddy?
What?
Mommy said you're going to be asleep for a long time.
That's true.
Are you going to die?
What?
Are you going to die?
Why do you say that?
When Jamie's grandfather died, Mommy told him that he would be asleep for a long time.
No. This is different. They're going to wake me up. But you have to sleep on the way up and sleep on the way down. Otherwise, you go cuckoo. And there wouldn't be enough food aboard for the flight for everybody.
Oh.
In watching this scene, I was reminded of the scene in Apollo 13 where Jim Lovell assures his son that nothing will go wrong when he is in outer space. But the difference between the two is that Apollo 13 occasionally went back to Earth and showed us the emotional repercussions during the actual mission. In contrast, 2010 jumps over any consequences that these scenes may have and lands on more montage scenes. I would describe this aspect of the film as efficient, but not entirely effective. I think a few reactionary scenes combined with a bit more dialogue could have been shored up to fill in a lot of these gaps. So after bidding his family adieu, the film then jump cuts to Dr. Floyd being awoken on the Russian spacecraft. Which is complete and total bullshit. How am I supposed to know he got there unless I see every single square inch of the trip for 45 minutes? In truth, this aspect of the film actually has the opposite problem. This is a particularly harsh transition from fond farewell to, hey, we're there. Establishing emotional conflicts as this film has done is fine, but only so long as you follow them up with the consequences and repercussions of those established conflicts. If you're spending time on these issues and then move on to something else entirely, you've transformed something meaningful into something that only serves as filler. 2001 was as guilty of this as 2010, but in a different way. In 2001, the emotional and personal conflicts, with the exception of the parts involving Hal, are non-existent. Here, they are established, but in all honesty, they never really amount to much. But Dr. Floyd is awakened, and so we can at least move along in the story. He finds himself alone as the only member of the American crew to be awakened, and is now stranded on a ship full of Russians who don't really want him there. The ship hasn't arrived at their destination yet, but the American government felt it necessary for the Russians to wake him up because of some anomalous readings they just received from a moon.
You've done a spectral analysis?
Of course I have. And what?
Dr. Orlov, I'm not taking a survey. If you've done the analysis, what are the results?
Nothing conclusive.
Two opposing cultures, on the other end of the solar system, with nothing to politically gain or lose, and they can't even trust each other enough to have one member of a team come out and say, "We don't know shit." The reading suggests that there is something on the moon, and that it's moving. Dr. Floyd tries to get a few more answers out of the Russian crew, but they refuse. According to them, Dr. Floyd's only mission in which he has jurisdiction is when they arrive at Discovery, because that's United States territory. Anything that happens before that is under their purview, and thus they aren't obligated to tell him anything. On the face of it, this is being passed off as one group having jurisdiction over another. But as the conversation goes on, it isn't hard to figure out what's really going on here.
The problem in Central America is growing worse.
This looks as if you've detected the presence of chlorophyll.
The United States is threatening a naval blockade.
There's nothing but ice down there, so how the hell can there be any chlorophyll?
You know and I know that my country cannot allow a blockade.
How fast is it moving?
We are under instruction.
Listen, just because our governments are behaving like asses doesn't mean that we have to. We're supposed to be scientists, not politicians. How fast?
Dr. Floyd, I am also an officer of the Soviet Air Force.
How fast?
1 meter per minute.
Don't worry, I'm just observing.
Okay, so far, I can totally understand why this movie was shunned. I mean, sure, we've established a conflict that permeates the human condition with regard to superficial cultural and political differences, addressed our characters' inability for even the least and isolated of them to separate their respective political goals from their common human goal of exploration and understanding, but where's Stanley Kubrick crapping a bag of Skittles onto a celluloid for 45 minutes? The crew ultimately decides to send a probe down to the moon, but whatever the hell is down there seems to want to keep to itself, so it blasts the hell out of it. The Russian crew chalks it up to an electrostatic buildup, but Floyd interjects with the obvious, that there's something living down there, and it obviously doesn't want to be bothered. The ship then arrives in the vicinity of the Discovery. They need to put themselves in an orbit around Io, but they don't have enough fuel to slow themselves down. So they have to resort to a risky maneuver known as aerobraking, something that is thankfully proven to work safely and effectively. On paper. In practice, however, no one has actually tried this before, so naturally, the crew is a bit scared out of their minds. As the ship makes its approach, the thing starts to shake itself apart. And here we get to what I consider to be the best scene in the film, a scene that personifies the ideas the film has been building up to thus far. A woman wanders the decks of the ship and spots Dr. Floyd. She says nothing, but the look in her eyes is all the explanation Floyd needs, and he welcomes her into his compartment without hesitation. The woman has never met Dr. Floyd. She speaks not a word of English, but her dilemma, one that personifies the human condition, is the same as Dr. Floyd's. All the conflicts between the Americans and the Soviets back on Earth, all the saber-rattling, the political posturing, is irrelevant in this moment. These two strangers from opposite sides of the political spectrum represent everything that is different about their respective cultures, everything that makes one threatened by the other. But in this moment, all of that is rendered moot. The fear of death and the fear of the unknown goes to the core of the human condition that unites us all in humanity, and in this moment, these individuals have only two things in common. They're human, and they're scared. In this human moment, the distinction between American and Soviet means nothing. The procedure goes off without a hitch, and the woman thanks Dr. Floyd with a farewell kiss. So much for the Cold War. Dr. Floyd then goes to analyze the last transmission of Bowman. His last words before disappearing into the unknown were, "My God, it's full of stars." This line was apparently used in Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 novel, but didn't make it into the film version because, naturally, Kubrick couldn't be bothered to actually write anything. Fortunately, Hyams can, and so this actually becomes a part of the story. The rest of the American crew is awoken and are ready to make their way over to the Discovery. Unfortunately, there are apparently no docking procedures between American and Russian spacecraft, so one from each side has to spacewalk over to the other ship. This sequence does a nice job of conveying the coming together of two foreign crews as well. John Lithgow's character is terrified of the spacewalk, and the Russian tries to help him by occupying his mind, teaching him some Russian phrases.
50 meters.
Hey, Max, how do you say chicken?
Kuritsa.
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 You speak better than me.
Lithgow
eventually returns the favor when they arrive on the ship, and the Russian has a freak out of his own.
Stale, rotten, like something has...
What's the matter?
Discovery, what's happening?
I think... No, I think you're wrong.
Bowman was the last one aboard. Poole was lost outside.
Bowman reported that he ejected all the rest who died in hibernation.
There can't be anybody there.
Maybe Bowman managed to get back to the Discovery and died here.
No, he didn't.
He never came back.
It's probably the galley. Some meat went bad before Discovery froze up. That's what it is. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Hey, would I lie to you?
Hello, Discovery. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Everything's fine. We're proceeding to the bridge.
Lorax.
You and me both. How do you say thank you?
Spasiba.
This scene establishes two things. It establishes the bond between two warring cultures in a broad sense, and in a particular sense establishes a real bond of friendship between these two characters. A point that will eventually pay off in an admittedly predictable but nevertheless satisfying way. Overall, a very good scene. Though truth be told, I did eventually grow tired of listening to Lithgow hyperventilate. So now the Discovery is online and operational, and we can finally begin the business of reactivating Hal. This had better be good. Welcome to part 3. So as the Discovery is undergoing a rebirth, the crew decides to send someone over to the giant monolith.
After 9 years and hundreds of millions of miles, we are about to come face to face with the monolith. The last human being who did that disappeared. Something truly amazing is going on out here, and I really believe this black giant is controlling it all. We have so much to ask. I have the feeling the answers are bigger than the questions.
Bigger than the questions? No, didn't you see 2001? Just raising questions is all that matters. Lithgow's Russian friend is sent out to the expedition.
Oh my God.
Max, get the hell out of there. Max, you bastard! Can you hear me? Answer me! Max!
Poor Lithgow. I guess I should really be saying poor Max. This part of the film is only mildly effective for me, however. The bond between Lithgow's character and Max has been very nicely established, but Max's death scene doesn't really carry very much weight. It comes up very quickly, not much comes of it, and it will rarely be brought up after this. Reasonably well done, but certainly not the best the movie has to offer. And was that thing going to Earth?
We have an unconfirmed report that the president is going to announce a full-scale military alert tonight. White House sources have refused to confirm or deny that report. We do...
Hello, Betty. Hello, Betty. Please talk to me.
Is that you?
I'm not sure. I remember Dave Bowman. And everything about him.
Dave is dead.
All Dave Bowman really was is still a part of me.
Why are you here?
I don't know why. I think to say goodbye. You're married again? Is he a good man?
Yes, he is.
I'm glad. I love you.
Oh, Dave. I love you.
Goodbye, Betty.
Don't go.
I'm already there.
I understand.
Something's going to happen. And I wanted to say goodbye.
What's gonna happen?
Something wonderful.
Escape.
Holy shit! Now this is something far more meaningful and substantive than a random guy arbitrarily changing into different things for no reason. David Bowman has apparently been transformed into something so beyond humanity that he can travel the solar system in a second and will himself into a transmission. But what does he do with this superhuman ability? He goes home. The galaxy is now his playground, and humanity is as far removed from his own being as an ant is to you and me. Yet the first thing we see him do in the film is say goodbye to his wife. Bowman is torn between the superhuman being he has become and the life he used to have. And for all his newfound powers and abilities, he seems to be having a hard time letting go of his old life, primitive though it may have been. Yeah, and second thought, this sucks. It was much better just to have him float out there and then roll the credits. I know I've already made this statement in as many sarcastic ways as I can, but I'm just gonna come out and say it now once and for all. Screw 2001: A Space Odyssey, just watch this. So now at long last, we get to the issue of Hal. Dr. Chandra has reactivated him and begins to question him on the events that led to his termination. Now, as Hal was the only part of 2001 that even resembles a film, the issue of Hal is the only part of 2010 that the writers are capable of screwing up. Will this be a credible addition to what was already a very good part of the previous film? Let's find out.
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
That's good. Do you know what those duties are?
Yes, I will operate the onboard systems of Discovery. There is a launch window in 31 days when Earth is in the proper position. There is enough fuel on board for a low-consumption route that will enable Discovery to return in 28 months. This will not present a problem.
That's very good. Now, Hal, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Not at all.
Do you recall Dave Bowman and Frank Poole leaving the Discovery?
Certainly not. That could never have happened, or I would remember it. Where are Frank and Dave?
They're fine. They're not here right now.
Who are these people? I can only identify you, although I compute a 65% probability that the man behind you is Dr. Floyd.
Don't worry, Hal. I'll explain everything later.
Has the mission been completed? You know that I have the greatest enthusiasm for it.
The mission has been completed, and you have carried out your program very well. And now, Hal, if you will excuse us for a moment, we wish to have a private conversation.
Certainly.
Well, it certainly sounds like Hal, but the notion that his memories of those events were erased doesn't really set well with me. I would have preferred to see Hal try and come to terms with what he had done, rather than just forget all about it. There was also a perfect opportunity for Hal to try and atone for his actions later in the film, as we will see. So far, not exactly bad, but it is starting to look like a bit of a missed opportunity. And now we come to the reason behind Hal's disobeying orders.
Wait. Do you know why Hal did what he did?
Yes, it wasn't his fault.
Whose fault was it?
Yours.
Mine?
Yours. In going through Hal's memory banks, I discovered his original orders. You wrote those orders. Discovery's mission to Jupiter was already in the advanced planning stages when the first small monolith was found on the moon and sent its signal towards Jupiter. By direct presidential order, the existence of that monolith was kept secret.
So?
So as the function of the command crew, Bowman and Poole, was to get Discovery to its destination, it was decided that they should not be informed. The investigative team was trained separately and placed in hibernation before the voyage began. Since Hal was capable of operating Discovery without human assistance, it was decided that he should be programmed to complete the mission autonomously in the event the crew was incapacitated or killed. He was given full knowledge of the true objective and instructed not to reveal anything to Bowman or Poole. He was instructed to lie. The situation was in conflict with the basic purpose of Hal's design, the accurate processing of information without distortion or concealment. He became trapped. The technical term is an H-Mobius loop, which can happen in advanced computers with autonomous goal-seeking programs.
The goddamn White House.
I don't believe it.
Hal was told to lie by people who find it easy to lie. Hal doesn't know how, so he couldn't function. He became paranoid.
You know, this kinda sucks. I mean, you got the sense that there was something along these lines that caused Hal to do what he did, but I don't care for the way this is being framed. It seemed to me that Hal did what he did because of a personal conflict, not a conflict of programming or interpretation of orders. It might not seem like that big a difference, but it actually is. Hal, as it was established in 2001, is a person beyond programming. So to suggest that this all happened because of his programming seems to undermine what was being expressed in the first movie. Again, I can't really say that this is bad exactly, it just isn't being done the right way. Watching the parts of 2001 involving Hal was an experience that I loved, and these additions don't really add to that experience for me. They only serve to try and continue it. But if we can't feel good about Hal in these instances, there is one thing we can feel good about, and that is Dr. Chandra. So far, out of all the characters in both films, he is the only one that treats Hal as if he is a person. And he is also the only one who seems to know exactly how to talk to him, precisely because he talks to him as a person, not just as a tool. If 2001 was Hal's shining moment, 2010 is steadily becoming Chandra's shining moment, and this will become especially apparent at the end of the film. So back on Earth, the Americans and the Russians decide that now would be a good time to say fuck it to the peace process and both officially declare war. This sucks mighty for the crews of the Leonov and the Discovery, as they are now all ordered to stop working together and they are banned from boarding each other's ships. Sucks for them. So with the mission now scattered, Dr. Floyd takes a bit of a break when he receives a mysterious message from an unknown source. The unknown messenger informs him that it is dangerous to remain here and that the crew must leave in 2 days.
Who recorded it?
This is not a recording.
Who's sending it?
There is no identification.
I don't understand.
Neither do I.
Is this message by voice or keyboard?
I don't know.
My response is, we don't have enough fuel for an earlier departure.
The answer is, I am aware of these facts. Nevertheless, you must leave within 2 days.
Al, who the hell is sending this?
I'm sorry, Dr. Floyd, I don't know.
Well, tell whoever it is that I can't take any of this seriously unless I know who I'm talking to.
Dr. Floyd?
Yes?
The response is, I was David Bowman. Do you want me to repeat the last response?
No. Tell Kernow that this is no time for jokes.
Dr. Kernow is not sending the message. He is in Accessway 2.
I'll tell whoever it is that I can't accept that identification without proof.
The response is, I understand. It is important that you believe me. Look behind you.
Oh my god, what's gonna be back there? Yep, it's Bowman. He basically repeats personally what he conveyed through Hal, that everyone has to leave in 2 days or something bad is going to happen to them. Now, what's weird for me about this is that through the entire conversation, he keeps changing randomly into the things we saw at the end of 2001. Now, the end of 2001 was random, meaningless, and a waste of time, but there was a sequence to what Bowman was turning into in that film. He got older, and older, and older, until he reverted back to when he was a baby, or became a new baby, or turned into a turkey sandwich. Who the hell knows or cares? The point is, there was a linear sequence to his transformation. So why would he suddenly start going back to his previous points in the sequence? I have no idea. My guess is that Hyams felt that it might be nice for the audience to revisit those images, but this is at the expense of those images making what little sense they actually did make in the first movie. So with this warning now legitimized, both crews decide to put aside their country's differences one last time. Screw the war back on Earth. They will work together and try to leave within the next 2 days. So here's their plan. They will attach the Discovery to the Leonov and use the fuel to propel them away from Jupiter. Then they will jettison the Discovery and use the Leonov's fuel to get them the rest of the way. Unfortunately, this will doom the Discovery, as well as Hal, to be stranded or possibly destroyed.
How long will it take you to program Hal for the launch?
I don't know. It's not as simple as that. I have spent the last several weeks programming Hal for a 1,000-day orbit back to Earth, and now all those programs will have to be dumped.
How long will it take?
We know how sensitive he is to mission objectives, and now you are telling me to program him for the destruction of the Discovery as well as his own destruction. Has anybody considered his reaction?
Are you saying that he might disobey orders as he did the last time?
That isn't what happened last time. He was given conflicting orders, and he did his best to interpret them.
Then what are you saying?
I am saying that I don't know how he will react. I'm sorry, but I don't.
Have you discussed this with Hal?
No.
Load the new program. We don't have any choice.
Now remember, he was programmed for curiosity. If the crew was killed, he was capable of carrying out the mission on his own initiative. He will question me about the change in plans. What do you want me to tell him?
Tell him Discovery's in no danger.
But that's not true.
We don't know that.
He will suspect it, otherwise why would we be leaving weeks ahead of our launch window? Whether we are based on carbon or silicon makes no fundamental difference. We should each be treated with appropriate respect.
So, our choice is him or us? Well, I vote us. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Will he believe you?
Yes.
Then let's get started. We haven't got much time.
Here again is an example of Chandra being the only one who regards Hal the right way. For him, they may as well be asking to leave Dr. Floyd or Kurnow to their possible demise without so much as the truth. So the plan goes well at first, and the crew begins their escape. Hal does what he's told in the beginning, but soon begins to question why they are leaving so early. Now, what Chandra doesn't know is that Dr. Floyd has a kill switch in a calculator for Hal, which can terminate him at the first sign of trouble. As the ships leave, the planet Jupiter starts to be consumed by unknown forces, almost as if it is being eaten alive. Now, the next scene is a bit long, but it's important for all of you to see the whole thing.
This is a very unusual phenomenon. Don't you think I should abort the countdown so that you can remain to study it?
Chandra, get on the headset.
Use the private channel.
Okay.
Now, you better talk quickly. Persuade him to continue the countdown. I don't care what you tell him. Only don't let him stop.
5 minutes to ignition. Dr. Chandra, I'm ready to stop the countdown if you want.
No, Hal, don't stop.
I am fully confident in your ability to study the phenomenon by yourself. I have complete faith in you. Propellant tank pressurization completed. Voltage steady. Are you sure you are making the right decision? I think we should stop. 4 minutes to ignition. I enjoy working with human beings and have stimulating relationships with them.
We enjoy working with you, Hal, and we will continue to do so even if we are separated by great distance.
I think we should stop the countdown, Dr. Chandra.
No. Don't do that.
This behavior is inconsistent with logic, Dr. Chandra. This phenomenon is too important to leave, unless it represented danger. Do you think there is danger here?
Captain.
How critical is our ignition?
Can we do this manually?
It's very critical. We cannot be accurate to 1/10 of a second if we do it manually.
3 minutes to ignition. Dr. Chandra, I am waiting for your reply.
I don't have time to explain everything to you, Hal. We have to leave here and we need your help.
30 seconds to final sequence. If you would tell me the reasons, perhaps I could be of help. Final sequence beginning. 2 minutes to ignition. Dr. Chandra, I find it difficult to proceed with the ignition without knowing why we are doing this. Is the mission in jeopardy?
Yes, we're in jeopardy.
Is that why we are making our escape launch before the launch window?
Yes.
Ignition in 90 seconds. If there is danger here, and I use up all the fuel in the escape, what will happen to the Discovery?
It could be destroyed.
And if I don't proceed with the launch?
Then the Leonov and everybody in it could be destroyed.
I understand now, Dr. Chandra.
Do you want me to stay with you?
No. It is better for the mission if you leave. 1 minute to ignition. Thank you for telling me the truth.
You deserve it.
There's good news and bad news here. The bad news is that I don't particularly care for this version of Hal's fate. Hal had a tragic death in 2001. He was a victim of his own personhood, as we all sometimes are. So to give him a hero's death in this way is just kind of weird for me. We have an ending for Hal that is significantly less good than in the previous film. But the good news is that what this scene is trying to convey works, and it is trying to convey exactly what 2001 was trying to convey with regard to Hal, namely that Hal is a person. But this fact was made apparent by Hal's behavior in the previous film. In this film, the fact is being made apparent by Chandra's behavior. Watching this scene, you get the sense that if Chandra had been there instead of Poole and Bowman, that the whole incident could have been avoided. And that's probably true. Because when Hal is treated as nothing more than a machine or a tool, things tend to go bad. And that is precisely because he is not just a machine or a tool any more than you and I are. Hal is a person, and when he is treated with the same dignity and respect as a person, things tend to go right. So as Jupiter is eaten alive and the crew escapes, Hal is contacted by Bowman once again, and is told to transmit a message to Earth. He tells him that it is the most important message he will ever send, and sadly, it will be his last. At last, Jupiter is gone, but in its place is now a new sun, which surrounding it are new planets. Hal's last message was as follows: "All these worlds are yours, except for Europa. Attempt no landings there." The strange thing is that these new worlds caused the Americans and the Russians to cease hostility towards one another. I'm not really sure why a new sun or planets would do that, but alright. As this is the climax of the film, it turns out to be somewhat of a flimsy one. The internal conflicts and resolutions are what made this film work, but the external stuff regarding these new worlds don't really have anything to do with that. All of this would have taken place whether the Americans and Russians worked together or not, and you don't really feel like they participated in any of the external plot at all. Still, the crew working together as well as the resolution of Hal as a person is where this film shines. In truth, 2010 was just okay. It wasn't great by any means. It still had its pacing problems. Hal, as well as other elements of 2001, seem only to be there to service the fans, and a lot of what the story tries to do was eventually done much better in films like Apollo 13 and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. As a film, 2010 was a mixed bag, but there is one thing that separates it from 2001. It is a film. The end.
Dr. Chandra?
Yes?
Will I dream?
I don't know.
40 seconds.